All right. So what I want to do as a basic, just to get started,
Mm-hmm.
I just want to. You remember that mission that you set up for me, where you placed, you started off with a basic map. You placed some targets at an airport,
Mm-hmm.
and then you placed two aircraft somewhere else, and it's just take off, destroy the targets, and land. Really, really basic. Let's start off with that. So that's
Okay.
going to comprise of primarily placing static targets, and give them no intelligence. In other words, they can default to whatever they are. Then placing or initializing combat aircraft, and show me how to make one a regular player and one AI, that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
How to
So you're looking for like an AI wingman to go with you?
optionally, yeah,
Okay.
and how to configure stores, configure stores slash fuel on aircraft,
All right.
configure or implement. And I know you didn't do this in the mission that you created for me, but I'd like to know anyway. Configure, implement the whole business of waypoints.
Okay. Sure.
Okay.
Well, that's going to be a part of the whole process anyway, so we'll go through all of that.
Okay. All right. So I have the mission editor up, and I guess what I'm looking at right now is Sokurami Babusharaha.
Yeah, Sukumi Babashari. Basically, you should be looking at the entire map of the Black Sea region. So all the major airports that can be used
Mm-hmm.
should be showing up right now. Of course, we already established that you can zoom in, you can zoom out using the
Right.
mouse wheel.
Yes.
So the first thing you really want to do is you want to figure out where your area of operations, your AO, is going to be. But before we get to that, the very first thing you want to do, you want to go up to File,
File.
and you want to go with New.
New.
Now, by default, when you open this thing, it's already new. But the reason why we want to do that, you should have a window that pops up that says Coalitions.
Yes.
If you have any special arrangements that you want to put in, like say, for example, you notice in the middle list,
Mm-hmm.
everything is not assigned to either red or blue team.
Uh-huh.
By default, blue team would be like NATO, and red team would be like Russia or,
Warsaw Pact.
yeah,
Right.
or adversarial nations is another way to look at it.
Right.
So on this screen, if you wanted to change some of the parameters, like say you wanted Ukraine to be a friendly country instead of an adversarial country, you would, basically drag them over, click them and drag them over to the blue side. Or you could add like, any of the countries in the middle that you wanted to participate. 9 times out of 10, you won't need to make any changes with this. I've
Uh-huh.
done it rarely on certain situations that I wanted to tell a particular story. So I wanted this country to actually be on my side.
Got it.
So we can just go okay on that one.
Okay.
All right, so that'll put us back to our starting map. Now, you said that you wanted to basically pretty much replicate the mission that we had done, that little
Yes.
air-to-ground training mission. All right.
Right.
If I remember correctly, we started that at Batumi,
Mm-hmm.
and when you zoom in to Batumi, between Batumi and Kobuleti should be that X-shaped runway, literally right above the city of Kobuleti.
All right. So looking at the Black Sea region, where on this map would these airports be?
Batumi is going to be the southernmost airport. It's as
Okay.
far as you can get in Georgia before you cross into the Turkish border.
I see it. Okay. There's Batumi and there's Kobuleti.
Right. So
Also,
we zoom into the map, so both of those are on the map
right.
that we can work there.
Also, you move the map around with the right click key.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Right mouse button.
Right mouse. Okay. All right. So I got Kobuleti and I got Batumi.
All right, and then you should see that little X-shaped airport on the map in between the two of those,
Yes.
right above where it says the city of Kobuleti in blue writing.
Okay. Now, what is that X?
That is our target airport. The reason why they put that in DCS is for exactly such things. In most of the trainings, it's used as a target airport, so you
Oh,
set
really?
your targets there.
So there.
It's just an easy enough landmark to find. That's why they use it.
Got it. Okay. So all right. That's pretty cool. All right. All right. So I'm
Okay.
zoomed in.
All right, now the very first thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to place the aircraft that we're going to be using for this particular sortie.
Okay.
Now, a quick note about any aircraft that you place.
Mhm.
By default, it's going to default to the US. If you decide that you wanted to play the Russians, you will have to change that.
Okay.
Whenever you decide to drop an aircraft in there,
Mm-hmm.
also by default, it is airborne. You have to tell it that you want to start from the ground.
The ramp. Okay.
Right.
Yeah, in this case, let's go ahead and make both aircraft A10s.
Okay, so we're going to go with two A10s. Now, on the left side of your screen,
Uh-huh.
you'll see File, MIS, OBJ, and Map, and then there's a bunch of icons.
File, MIS, OBJ, and then a bunch. Yeah, okay, cool.
Under OBJ, the
Mm-hmm.
very first icon looks like the silhouette of an F-16.
I see it.
That's how you select your plane. So go ahead and click that.
Okay.
On the right-hand side, it's going to pop up something that basically are the parameters, the basic parameters that we're going to use for what we want to put down.
Okay.
What I try to do whenever I put something down, I will already assign it a name. Otherwise, every single thing you have will say new airplane group.
Got it.
So we're going to call this player group. So we'll just type in player group.
Even though it's so when you click on that, you're assigning a group of planes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Even though we're going to put down one first, we're going to add more to that group, which I'll show you how to do that in a second.
Okay. Player group. Okay.
All right. Now, we'll skip past condition because we always want that 100%. I don't think you want to start in a plane that's about to blow up.
Okay. That's what that is.
Country,
USA.
we can leave that as USA.
Mm-hmm.
Task, that is going to default to CAS no matter what you do.
Which
You
is-
can change that. As soon as you plop a plane down, it's going to set it to CAS.
Which is close air support.
Close air support,
So we're
right?
gonna leave that there.
Right.
Okay.
You'll notice we can't do anything with unit 1 of 1 right now because
Okay.
we haven't placed anything. So
Got
the
it.
next thing below that is the type.
Okay.
Now, if you left click on that, that'll give you the list of all the aircraft that could possibly be used.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they're colored differently. Anything that's colored in yellow means you have it in your DCS as a flyable aircraft.
Okay.
So right now, by default, it should be set to A10A. Below A10A should be A10C. So that's what we're going to select. But if you just kind of scroll down, you can see at a glance which aircraft you have that you could utilize for any mission you wanted to create as a player aircraft.
Let's keep this A10A.
Okay, so let's keep it as A10A.
Mm-hmm.
And you can just go to the next one, which says skill.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is going to be important. Not only does this set your AI skill,
Mm-hmm.
but it also tells the system, I would like a player to use this. So when you click over that, you'll see it goes from average, good, high, excellent, random,
Mm-hmm.
and client.
Client is player.
key. Right, so you want to make sure that's selected.
Got it.
We're not going to worry about the pilot number for now. That's where you could put your call sign, your name, whatever.
Okay.
But it's going to automatically default to pilot and then the next number in the sequence. You can change that after that.
Got it. Okay.
All right, so now that we have the parameters that we're going to be using, we need to put it where we want to put it. So if you hover your mouse over Batumi, it doesn't matter where in the general vicinity, just hover it over Batumi, and then
hold on. Okay.
left click once,
All right. Hover over Batumi, the airport,
right?
and left click once.
Right.
Bam.
So you should now see a yellow icon that has an A in the middle, which of course stands for attack plane.
Got it.
And you'll notice that on the right side now, it's filled in a lot of the blanks for us.
Right.
So here's what we're looking at real quick here. We have the player group. It kept our name.
Mm-hmm.
We have our country. We have our task, which defaults to CAS.
Uh-huh.
We have our aircraft type. And now under skill, you notice it says client.
Uh-huh.
Since this is going to be the player aircraft, we are going to change that. Open that up again where it says client.
Okay.
And you'll notice a new thing appears underneath client.
Right.
Player.
Player.
We want to do that because we want to tell DCS this is our aircraft.
Got it.
We're not going to worry about the pilot name. We're not going to worry about the tail number, which always defaults to 010 and then goes in sequence. We're not going to worry about the call sign. This is just what the ATC calls you when you're actually flying. But we are going to skip down to the next section that starts with waypoint, name, type, blah, 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 blah.
Uh-huh.
Right now, it has us airborne. Do
Okay.
you want to be airborne or do you want to be on the ground?
Want to be on the ground at the ramp.
Okay, so where it says type, which is the third one down,
Uh-huh.
right now it says turning point, which means basically a waypoint.
Mm-hmm.
If you click on that little downward arrow in that box, you will see a bunch of options. Flyover point, take off from runway, take off from ramp, take off from parking hot, and landing. Choose take off from ramp. That'll give you complete cold and dark startup.
Got it.
All right, so you'll also notice on the map itself, it actually snapped our aircraft across from wherever it is that you'd initially clicked.
To the ramp.
Yeah, it puts it to the first available parking spot. And if you look to the right of where we just said take off from ramp, it has the letters PRK, which stand for parking.
Got it.
In that box, you can tell it exactly which parking spot you want. I believe by default it should go to parking spot number 9, because that's big enough to handle that kind of aircraft.
It does. So if I want to move it to 1, select 1.
Right, you would change that to 1, and it'll literally go through all of them.
Okay.
Now, before we actually start adding waypoints, we have to ask ourselves this question. How many people are in our flight?
All right, so I just need to know how to create 2. Once I can figure out how to do 2, an AI and a player, I can figure out the rest.
Okay.
Okay, so we're going to need one more plane. Let's make it an F-15.
All right, now here's the thing with flights. Flights always have to be the same type of aircraft. You're in the Air Force, you know that.
Actually, so now it's been over 10 years, so I guess I can say this. But when I was in Kuwait, Operation Southern Watch, they had F-16s and A-10s.
Okay, so that sounds to me like it was a package, but I doubt both of those had the same exact call sign, though.
I see what you're saying. Got it. Okay. All right, so in this case, we want 2 of the same aircraft, 2 A-10As, please.
Okay, so now we're going to go back up to where it says unit.
Okay.
You'll notice that now it's in a darker box, which means we can actually manipulate this. So you'll see it says unit 1 of 1.
Got it.
On the right-hand side box, that's where we change the numbers. So you're going to use the little tiny right arrow there and just click it once till it says unit 2 of 2.
In the second box on the right?
Uh-huh.
Okay, it's 2 of 2.
Right. It should change a couple of things. First thing it should do is it should change the skill level. Instead of saying player, it'll probably say high or random or whatever.
Got it.
Indicating it's an AI.
Right.
And it'll also change the pilot name. So now the pilot name should say 002, which is, of course, the next in sequence. Same thing with the tail number. It'll give you the next one in sequence, so it should be 011.
That's correct.
So you now have 2 aircraft that are parked at Batumi, and if you go down to where the parking spot is, PRK, it now says 10. So it's picked the next parking spot in sequence for your wingman.
Got it.
All right, so now we have 2 planes. If you want, you can change the skill of the pilot. High is pretty good. The AI is pretty smart if you leave him at high. If you put him to average, then be prepared to lose your AI before the mission is done.
Now, if I wanted it, and if I wanted to be a second player, just make it player. Or
if you wanted it to be a second player, you make it client.
Client.
Yeah, you don't have the option of putting 2 players in there unless one is the player and the other one is a client. If we were doing this for multiplayer, we would have both of them set to client, so that way you can pick and choose which aircraft you want to go in. But since it's single player, we don't even need to worry about client.
Makes sense. That makes perfect sense. Good point. All right.
So we have 2 aircraft that are currently at Batumi Airport. We still haven't added any waypoints yet. We do kind of want to load out our aircraft, however.
All right, so hang on a second here. Let me go over a couple things. So at this point, we're putting together a flight, correct? This flight is named player group.
Right, and the ATC will refer to you as Enfield 1 or Enfield 1-1.
I can change that player, that where it says name player group, I can change that to whatever I want.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Second thing, pilot, I can change that to whatever. What is ATC what's ATC gonna call me?
ATC is going to call you by whatever is in the call sign box, which with DCS you cannot really get to pick a lot of call signs. But if you click on where it says Enfield,
right,
it'll give you the various choices: Enfield, Springfield, Uzi, Colt, Dot, Ford, and so on and so forth.
Got it.
And then you can set the number to the right. So if you want it to be Enfield 9-1, you can change that.
So the second plane is going to be called Enfield 1-2.
Right, and you will be Enfield 1-1 as the player. The player is always the wing lead. You cannot make the player a wing man.
Got it.
Unless it's a multiplayer setup.
Understood. Last question. All right, so we've created new and we did some stuff. We need to save our work. How do we do that?
Easy. Go to File.
File.
And always go Save As initially.
Save As.
And we're going to give it a name. So think of a name and I'll put it in there.
All right, we're gonna call this DCS Mission Editor 101. Now, we need to save this in such a fashion that it actually shows up as a mission to play in DCS when you want to fly something. So where do you save it?
Well, really, when it comes to that, you can save it anywhere, but my suggested location, you see on the left-hand side of that box, there's a whole list of all the various aircraft and add-ons that you have for DCS. At the very top, it says My Missions. When you click on that, and actually I think you might have to double-click on that.
Okay, I'm in there.
It will show where all of your custom saved missions are. So when you name it DCS Mission Editor 101, it'll add .miz, which is the format for mission files on the end.
Got it.
And that's where you save it. So you just click OK.
And so it's going to save in C, username, saved games, DCS missions.
Right. So that's where you're going to find your missions.
Got it. Okay.
That's the default location for saving missions. What I tend to do is I'll put them a little bit more organized. Like if I know I'm going to be flying XYZ type of plane, I'll use the example of a Su-33. I will put it in the Su-33 folder so I know where to look for it. But that's only because I make a crap ton of missions.
Got it. All right.
Now, you notice when you do that as well, in the lower left-hand corner, you now have your name of your mission.
I see it in the bottom left. Okay. So let's zoom back in where we were, and I clicked on the A, and that brought up the airplane group again.
Right. Now, before we can do anything else, we need to figure out what our loadout is going to be for this particular mission.
Stores, precisely. Okay.
All right. So, right over that bottom section there, you'll see it's currently set to waypoint mode, which is the 3 little connected dots there.
Okay.
To the right of that, if you mouse over it, it says payload.
All right. Okay, stop. Which side of the screen are you on? Left or right?
The right-hand side of the screen, where your player group is, about halfway down, in between where it says late activation and the word waypoint.
Late activation and the word waypoint. Yeah, those little knobs, those buttons right there.
Yeah, those little tabs right there.
Right.
That's how you're going to change various stuff. If we just go over through them real quickly, the first one is where you set up your waypoints.
Okay, hang on a second. So so I'm on the first plane. So to go to the second plane, I just click Unit 2 of 2.
Right,
Unit
you
1.
use the first box, not the second, because if you use the second, you're going to add more planes.
Exactly. All right. So the first box gives you what you see. The second one, payload.
The number of units in that flight.
Second one clicks and gives payload.
Oh, yes, I see what you're talking about.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. And the third one is
triggered actions.
Triggered
Now,
actions.
I'll give you a little bit of an example on triggered actions. Let's say, for example, Enfield Flight had an escort flight of F-15s, but you don't want them to start until you've actually taken off. As one of the advanced things you can do with triggered actions, you can set your AI flight to be uncontrolled, meaning they're cold and dark, there's no one in the cockpit. And then you can set a trigger to where after you have taken off, whether it is you're past a certain amount of knots or you're past a certain altitude, the trigger action will be to start that flight. So then they'll get in the cockpit and start up.
Got it.
But that's like an advanced thing. We won't worry about that. We are going to do the payload, however.
Right. We can do triggers and more advanced mission editing at a different point. All right. So I'm on the second tab. I'm looking at my stores. Okay.
Right. So you should have a default set of stores that DCS has given you.
All right. So how do I know on the screen what my stores are? The ones that have numbers next to it?
Well, pretty much the ones with numbers indicate that you have multiple of that item on that particular pylon.
Okay.
I'll give you an example. The very first one that we're looking at, under where it says empty, on the left side, it's written, DCS always does this, they tell you what your stores are. So it says AGM-65D times 4, indicating you've got 4 Maverick missiles on either side, 2 on either side. You've also got...
Hang on a second here. 4 Maverick missiles. 2 on either side.
If you're looking for where they are, look at pylon number 3 and pylon number 9.
I see that, but what's in column 11?
Column 11 is going to be AIM-9 Sidewinders times 2. And the way the Warthog works is instead of having
I
sides,
see.
they have them on one rack on one side.
I see. Okay, so that row there says I have 4 what are those 80 gram missiles again?
Mavericks.
Mavericks, and 2 sidewinders.
Right. And then you also have an ALQ-131, which I believe, if I'm not too mistaken, could be like a jamming pod or something like that. I forget all of those designations when it comes to that stuff.
All right. So let me see. Here's where I was getting confused the last time. On this store screen, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 rows.
Right. Your rows are your different loadouts.
So at any one time, only one of these rows is going to be active.
Right.
All right. So right now, which one is active?
Right now, you should have the empty one active, the one that's the darkest.
Oh, okay. Got
So
it.
click on any of these rows. It doesn't matter which one. Just click on one, and you'll
Right.
notice that row gets dark. So that's
Got
what
it.
you're now equipped with.
Okay. And I have an A10, virtual A10 spinning in the back. Let me see.
Yep.
And I can use my mouse to move him.
Yep.
And I can click. It doesn't actually show the stores though.
No, it's not. It's only designed to show you which livery you're using. If you look right above that, it says paint scheme.
Uh-huh.
And if you click on the paint scheme and go through that list there, it'll show you all the various different liveries that you have for it.
Got it. Okay. Ooh, let me see if that one for Barksdale.
That's a new thing, by the way. They just recently added that in.
I wonder if the Barksdale. There it is. The 47th Fighter Squadron. Barksdale. Let's go ahead and
Yep.
click on that bad boy. All right. There it is. All right. So click on any of these. Will select a set of weapons. So I can go ahead and
Right.
select what they've already suggested. And all I have to do is just select it and then hit what?
That's all you have to do, really, is to select it, and then you move on to your wingman. So you go back up to Unit 1 of 2, and you switch that Unit 1 to Unit 2.
And then you can give him stores also.
Yeah, and you can choose to give him the exact same stores you have, or you could choose a completely different loadout for him. But just bear in mind, if you tell him to do something and he doesn't have the ordnance for it, he's not going to do it.
All right. Okay. So So let's recap. With regards to the stores, these rows are what DCS proposes,
Right.
and I can select any one that I want, and then I move on to my next wingman by clicking Unit 2 of 2, and then give him stores also.
Right.
Now, with regards to these weapons, if I wanted to create a new combination, let's say all I wanted were air-to-air missiles, what I would do is click New,
Yep.
and then enter. Let's just
Enter a name
give
for
it
your
name.
payload.
Air to air. Hit OK,
You hit OK.
and it comes in a new row that's empty.
Right.
And at this point, how do I assign stores to pylons?
Now, with this particular aircraft, there's really only one set of pylons that you can use, and you've already seen that on the rest of them. That's number 11. So if you right-click on number 11, you'll see it says air-to-air, bombs, and pods. So
Got
at
it.
this point, if you mouse over air-to-air, to the right of that, you'll see all the different types of setups that you can use. With the A10, you could either have single sidewinder, or you can have 2 sidewinders on a rack, an LAU 105.
All right, so I'm going to select the first one, and that's where it gives it ×2. And then you go to
Right.
the column 10, right-click, and there I can give it bombs or rockets. Now, does it
Yes.
automatically load up both sides to keep it even?
No, you can individually load everything differently. Like I've seen situations where you have like AGM 65D Maverick on one side, and you have an AGM 65H or K or something on the other side. Completely different type of missile. I mean, they're similar, they're within the same family, but they have slightly different weights and, of course, different electronics on board.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be identical, but for the sake of weights and balances, it's a good idea.
Okay. Now, column 1, is that the pod that's for using for tracking for bombs and smart weapons
Yeah.
and whatnot?
Yep.
And that can either be ALQ 131 or ALQ 184.
Right. The more common of the two is the 131.
Okay. I'm not going to use this time to go through the ins and outs of the weapons. People watching this video can research that themselves. Just know that you can customize your own set of stores. So the air-to-air I just created, I'm just going to go ahead and delete it. So what I do is just mouse over it or click it, then hit delete.
Yep, just hit delete.
All right. So we're going to give player 1, which is a player, We'll give them the first row, and then click to unit 2 of 2, and click the first row, and he's going to have the same set of stores.
Right.
Okay, so we got 2 planes at that base, and they're loaded with weapons. Now what?
Okay, now we need to figure out where they're going to go.
Okay.
To do that, we're going to go back to that first tab to the left of payload where it says route.
Uh-huh.
Now remember, we're starting from the ground, and the way that DCS does its waypoints is whatever you have in where it says ALT for altitude and speed,
Uh-huh.
it's going to use that parameter for the next waypoint you put down. So we're going to need to tell DCS at waypoint 1, we want to be, say, for example, 5,000 feet up at a speed of 300 knots.
Okay.
So now in order to create the waypoint,
Uh-huh.
below all of that stuff where it says start time 12.0.0.0,
Uh-huh.
you'll see 3 buttons: add, edit, and delete.
Mm-hmm.
Click on add.
So
Left click.
we're creating our first waypoint.
We're creating our first waypoint. This is what we're supposed to do the moment we take off.
All right. Now, this waypoint has to be for either aircraft or the first one.
It's always for the first aircraft. The second aircraft is considered the wingman, so it's going to follow. But even if you have your number 2 plane selected, it'll still do it for both of them, because as a flight, they have to fly this route.
Got it. All right. So I went back. I went to the top and I selected unit 1 of 2. We're going to add 1 waypoint.
Yeah.
I've clicked on add. Okay. Now what?
Okay. Use your right mouse button to slew over to where you want to put that first waypoint. Let's put it right at the end of the ILS feather for Batumi.
All right. So that's going to be in the cell below Foxtrot Golf 92.
Right.
All right.
And we'll just left click.
Okay. I already did that by mistake, but use the left click button to place the first waypoint.
Right. So you
Okay.
should see where it says 1, and you should have a little circle right there for that first waypoint. Now, before you do anything else, go back to that altitude and speed section.
Uh-huh.
Assign an altitude and speed for it. So let's go with, I don't know, 5,000 feet.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Wait a second here. This says M. So can you change whether it's meters or feet or metric or non-metric?
Yes, you can, but you have to do that in your settings. We probably should have done that ahead of time. I have mine by default set to feet.
All right. So 5,000 feet is how many meters?
Probably about
1,500.
1,500. Yeah,
Yeah, about
close to that.
1,500 meters. Okay, cool.
And then you should also have speed in kilometers per hour.
Which will be about say 400.
Go with about 400, yeah.
Okay. All right.
Now, I want to call your attention to something here. Right below where you just added that 400, you'll see it says ETA.
Uh-huh.
As you drop waypoints, once you tell it what speed it's supposed to travel to get to that waypoint, it will automatically give you a real-time countdown as to how long it's going to take for you to get to that waypoint. So it should say 12 hours and like 2 minutes or 3 minutes or something like that.
Got it.
That's distance from waypoint 1, and it's going to keep counting with the number of waypoints that we put in there.
Okay.
All right, so this is our default altitude, 5,350, or in your case, what was it?
1,500 and 400.
Okay, where do we want our second waypoint to be? Now that we're all the way out, we should be in formation already. Where do we want to go? Do we want to head straight up to Kobuleti?
We want to go. Actually, since we're going to be doing an attack run at that airport, we want our next waypoint to be at Golf 14, top right corner.
All right, so let's go Golf 14, top right, left click. All of a sudden, we should have a number 2, and it should already, by default, be set to the same altitude and speed that you put it at before.
Got it.
And it should, of course, calculate what your ETA is to get to that point based on that speed.
Okay.
And that's how we're going to drop down the waypoint. So you think about where you want your next waypoint to be.
Got it. All right. So the next waypoint is going to be directly 360 north of the X, because you're going to be doing a bombing run.
Okay.
Or a strafe for attack run or whatever. So that's going to be right to the. It's going to be right at Kubeleti's. What do you call that?
The ILS feather?
Yeah,
or
whatever.
there's actually, I want to say that is an NDB.
Yes, there's an NDB right over that NDB in the middle of the
Yeah.
ILS feather. So we'll click that, and then at waypoint 3, that's where you're going to start your attack run. So what's next?
All right. Now the next waypoint would of course be our target waypoint. But before we get to that,
Mm-hmm.
I'll show you a nifty little trick that you can use whenever you're actually in the cockpit. You see how we just placed number 3?
Mm-hmm.
You'll notice in the box to the right, you have an option to name that waypoint.
The box to the right. Yes.
So let's just name it initial point.
Initial attack run.
Right, or IP basically.
Initial point.
Now what that will do is when you're in the aircraft and you pull up like the knee board, you will actually know that, okay, this is the point where we need to prepare for our attack. You'll already be fenced in, you're ready to do the attack. You know, you're going to be turning south from this point onwards and attacking the heck out of this thing.
Uh-huh.
All right, so our next waypoint should be our actual target location.
Okay, now stand by. I just did a file save, okay, and I had to click on my player group to bring up the mission editor configurator on the right. How do I go back to the waypoint editing?
Okay, you have your player group selected.
All I have to do is click. I just clicked on the waypoint number 3.
Right.
Okay, cool.
Now remember, you are now in edit mode, which means you can move these waypoints. But to add new waypoints, make sure you're at number 3 and then click add again before you start dropping waypoints in.
So I have to be in add format to add waypoints. Okay, cool.
Right. Otherwise, you'll be by default in edit format where you can just move them around.
That's good to know. All right, so what's the waypoint that you put down when you're doing your attack run?
I just put down a waypoint right at the target zone, which in this case would be literally right over the X-shaped airport.
Okay.
Now, if you want to, you could get all fancy and change the altitude for that to like, I don't know, 500 meters or something like that, just to indicate that you've got to dive. But since it's a player-controlled thing, it's not absolutely necessary. You already know when you get to that waypoint, that's your target zone.
Okay, cool.
All right, so after we're done with that, basically the mission itself is done. You're only going to make a couple of runs or whatever it is you got to do, and then you're heading RTB.
So do you need to put the final waypoint back up at Batumi?
Yes.
All right, let me go ahead and do that.
So just pick a spot right over the airport, put your waypoint down, and then the last thing that we're going to do to finalize this, to indicate, yes, we are going to land, on that last waypoint, which should be waypoint number 5, you'll see where it says type turning point.
Yes.
Change turning point to landing.
So make sure I'm in edit mode, 5 or 6, turning point to landing.
Right.
Got it.
So now you can, get out of the add mode. You're not adding any more waypoints. If you need to, move your waypoints around, that's all fine and well. You can do that at this point in time by being in the edit mode. You'll notice in the landing waypoint, it blocks out a lot of that information for you because it's assumed you're landing. You don't need to worry about anything. In fact, it even changes your altitude to the field elevation.
I see that. All right, Drew. Let's pause for a moment. Let me cut another track. Hope to God I was recording.
I hope so too, because I was not.
This is good stuff, man. All right.